to the film, just to start off, tell me a little bit about the inception.
It's kind of similar to the card scene in the movie where
Right.
you go out with the guys and always conversation tends to go toward monogamy and the issues that we have with monogamy.
Right.
And so I wrote the spec script, and my agent, who happens to be their agent, who doesn't remember my name, but he knows these guys really well.
Right.
Anyway, it was actually funny because it was a lucky process where there was a few producers that were interested in buying the script, Conundrum being one of them.
I have to say, when the script landed in our office, I found it hysterically funny. I love the concept, but that wasn't the most important thing, though I did love that. Most important thing was it was really funny, and it was consistently funny. It was funny from beginning to end. There were laugh-out-loud moments. And then I looked at it and I thought, well, the concept's great too, and it just seemed like something we could do, and we decided to bring Kevin in, Kevin Barnett, who we've written with before, and the four of us just sort of went at it.
What we liked about it is that you're tackling a dangerous subject, and we don't, we like doing that. We like, going without a net, so to speak, a safety net, and we knew that anytime you make a comedy about about the institution of marriage, it's like, yeah, you're walking a fine line because you might offend people, maybe, but maybe if you do it right, it'd be awfully funny too. And so that's what appealed to us, is the danger involved.
Also, we don't think in terms we don't think, is this a Farrelly Brother movie? If I read The Social Network, I'd want to make that movie. If I read The King's Speech, I'd want to make that movie, honestly.
Don't you think we'd botch it up though?
Yeah, it wouldn't be as good, but I'd want to make
Really
it.
like to see
Put
both
some-
of those, though.
Put some fart jokes in it.
Yeah.
What appeals to you about this approach of being so collaborative with multiple writers?
We believe in doing everything to make that script better. And if we have to bring in other writers to do a punch-up even for a weekend or for a day or for a week, we believe in doing that. We're trying to make the script as good as it can be.
We usually do use that. We always bring in guys to at least consult with, guys that we trust on a comedic level.
I've always written alone, so it was always inside my head, and their process is outstanding. It's interesting. It's one guy sits at the computer, and the rest of the guys just walk around, sit on the couch, whatever, and just throw stuff out. Everyone always says best idea wins, and it's really true. If we laughed in the room, that was it.
So you got your spec script, you read it and think it's funny. Tell me from a writing standpoint where the development process goes.
I think from the first point, that Bobby and Pete were talking about when the script came in, it felt somewhat Farrelly-esque because he had great sight gags and some really, really funny moments. But I think what drew the guys to it, and myself, that we loved the script so much, was that it was so realistic. That's the most proud thing about this movie. It's the most realistic portrayal of, a marriage. How they think about each other and about other people, and it's the truth. Every guy sees every woman that passes him, and he always fantasizes about it. And there's the guy who cheats and the guy who doesn't cheat. That's what the whole story is about.
And how much rewriting went on? All right, so after you do that second draft, was there a lot of rewriting?
That was it. It was 2 drafts, and we had nailed it. Plus 22, I guess. You know what? All this stuff's on my computer. I have no idea how many drafts we had, but we did a lot. A lot of drafts.
How long did it take?
Years.
It was the hardest script we ever wrote
4 years?
because of the balancing act. It was very difficult. You're dealing with married men you want people to root for married men to go out and cheat. That's the concept. A guy's got a week off for marriage. If you don't like that, you're not going to go to the movie. So we have to make you enjoy that concept. And yet, if you have this concept, it's like the old stage saying, if you bring a gun on stage, theater saying, if you bring a gun on stage, it must go off. Well, if you have this concept, someone's going to get laid. And how do you have 2 happy couples at the beginning, or semi-happy couples at the beginning, who break up for a hall pass, and things happen, and people get out there, and we pull that trigger, and then get them back together and have a happy ending? It's difficult, and it took forever to get it done.
So literally, this is the hardest script you think you've done?
Without question.
Are there any tricks in the craft of the actual writing when you're dealing with your protagonists to keep them likable?
It's a good question, and it is something that we always think about, we always talk about. In our very first movie, Dumb and Dumber, there's a scene at the beginning where they're talking about going out to Aspen, and Jim Carrey goes to the window, and he kind of gets emotional, and he starts talking about what a loser he is, and and it's a real serious moment, and his buddy's looking at him, and and there's nothing really funny about it, you know, and the studio kept asking us, like, what's this doing in here? Why would you keep this? It doesn't have a place in a comedy, and we really fought for it because we thought it did. It helps you to understand the guy a little. You know, 2 minutes later, he's selling a dead bird to a blind kid in a wheelchair.
Yeah, so you
But you
better
like
the
him.
guy.
You like him as soon as he does that because you feel like he hurts, and you know he's a guy who feels things. You like him, and it was an important lesson for us, and it's something we always try to do is make sure that you like the characters enough that we can do our outlandish gags on them.
And by the way, that doesn't even mean the guy has to be a nice guy. It just has to be someone you like. Like, for instance, Woody Harrelson in Kingpin, he's not really a good guy, but you like the guy because you know why he's a bad guy. He was a kid who had unlimited potential, who was cut down his prime or before his prime, and so you feel for him, and then you're rooting for that guy, even though he's not a very nice guy. So it's complicated.
I want to ask in a macro way, the edge that you guys have lived on your whole career.
It's not something like we don't think, oh, someone did this, we should do that. And in fact, it's not something we really focus on much at all. We really do what Kevin was saying. Like in the beginning, we try to create a character that's so likable that we can hang our gags on it. And the gags are kind of the easy part. They can come fairly easily, but we don't try to outdo ourselves. And when we do, we don't do it well, honestly. You know.
Almost all of our outrageous gags are bodily functions. They're things that actually can happen to people. You know, Ben Stiller zips his manhood up in his zipper, and it's like, not only can it happen, it has happened. It's happened at our home. You know, it's like something we laughed at. So, you know, in Dumb and Dumber, Jeff Daniels gets spiked. You know, Jim spikes his drink with the X-Lax, and he has to go to the bathroom. And it's like, yeah, that can happen. You know, that stuff does happen, and it's just we don't mind showing it. We don't mind showing probably more than most people would show because we think, I don't know, it's funny, and if it doesn't work, we won't show it. But we think it's worth a try, and usually when we show it, it seems to work. I mean,
And we
people
know
enjoy it.
when it doesn't work because we do a lot of test screenings. We do 4, 5, 6 test screenings, and sometimes they don't work, you know. And then other things that we're not sure. The hair gel and Mary, we didn't know that would work. We thought it would work, but then we thought it could also end the movie, ruin the movie. From that point on, the women might be grossed out, like, you know, and the guys might be grossed out too. You know, and then you don't care about Mary, you don't care about him, but you test it and you see what happens, and luckily they liked it.